We're recording already. We are recording. We've been recording this whole time. Sorry. So I do want to go over a few things first while we kind of are going over, while everybody's kind of getting into the room and getting all set up. And like I said, if you can, in fact, go back and get that other thing set up, you can do that. Just make sure you're listening to me for a few minutes. I've been grading, I'm not through grading, but I've been grading your speech analysis pieces. And I'm seeing stuff that's done really well, and then I'm seeing that there have been a few things, like everybody's kind of taking it most of the way to where it's supposed to be. Does that make sense? But we still have a little bit more to go as far as making something a true analysis. So far as I've read, almost everybody has had a good thesis, and that's key. You know, like where you say, here's my thesis is this was well done or this was not well done. You know what I mean? And you're going to do the exact same thing in the art analysis, which is why I want to kind of talk about it for a few minutes. And most of you have done a good job of telling me what they did. You know, like what they did on in their speech specifically. And those are the two things that I think mean that your thinking is in the right spot for the most part. But we need to take it one more step in order to really get it to be an analysis. And in order to do that, and I had a lot of people doing the next step too. Some of you gave me some really good evidence, like you gave me quotes, you gave me, you know, he'd made this motion when he said this. And that's fantastic. But then that's usually where it ended for most people. Was you said, here's the thing he did, here's what it was a good speech. What we need to see a little bit more of is for you to think of what function does that thing serve? I've been watching some videos for the AP class actually recently, and I thought the one guy had a really good analogy of what to do, of what analysis is like. It's almost like you're putting together an engine, or you're taking apart an engine. So if you were to take apart the engine of a car, and I said to you, you know, overall you say this is an engine that works or does not work, right? And if you were to take all those pieces apart, I could say, what is the function of that piece? And you could tell me, well, what that piece does. And then, well, why would the engine not work without it? And you could explain that. And it's that last bit of you explaining what that thing does and why it makes the whole thing work that I think you guys need to focus a little more on. So overall, if I were going to say something here, so if we went to, I'm just going to put this up on a whiteboard just to kind of give you guys a quick thing here. So in analysis overall, and this is any analysis essay, you need to have a thesis that states whether or not the work accomplished its goal. Okay, so you need to tell me whether or not that work accomplished its goal. And most of you did a really good job of that. But then the next thing that we have to do in order to do that, right, in order to make that really work, I need to know, you need to explain what the author or the speaker or the artist or whatever, right, whatever they did, you need to tell me what that was. And then we also need you to prove everything with evidence. And this is another thing. I had a lot of people telling me, oh, this is what happened, and not really giving me any evidence to prove that what you said was was real. Like I was just supposed to take that at its value, you know? So I really need you to prove things. So you might talk about less things, because a good idea is that whatever you have for all of this stuff, for this analysis, the statement, of course, is at the very beginning, but what they did and prove it with evidence should be about a third of what you say. Okay? And this is going to be quotes, or on here, it's going to be, you know, the evidence is going to be what something looked like, or the painting strokes, or the size, or the colors, or whatever, right? That's, okay, so that's the actual evidence, but I don't just need you to tell me what it was, okay? So about 2/3 of this should be your commentary. Okay, so you need to tell me what function does the evidence serve in the work, the overall work, I guess would be the best thing, because that's, sometimes it's a speech, sometimes it's a piece of literature, sometimes it's an artwork. Next year, we're going to be focusing, for those of you who are my juniors, next year is going to be focusing a lot on doing this analysis piece. And then thinking about this, it's the idea of how is that important to the whole. So the whole, or to the thesis. Okay, so how does this thing make it good? Why is the fact that the person moved around on the stage or whatever, or how is it that the way that those brush strokes were made, or the focus of the painting being where it is, how does that help us have a better understanding of the entire piece? So another important thing that I think is also a really good rule of thumb is to make your quotes no more than 9 words. Now, what you'll find is you'll find what the really important part of your quote is, or what the really important part is, and you're going to have to kind of infuse that into your own ideas. Is this making sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that I think, if you kind of keep these things in the back of your mind, you know, and you kind of have those there in your head, then this is going to be something that doing the next one and then all of next year is going to be way, way, way easier for all my 11th graders. My 12th graders, it will be good for you to have in college, because people are going to ask you to analyze things all the time. Okay? So hopefully, I think we probably have just about everybody that we're going to have today. So I want to move on. How did you guys like the moving wave sculpture stuff?
I thought that was awesome.
It was a little bit weird.
It was. It was. When we first start talking about all of this stuff, about sculptures, we're gonna start out just kind of talking about kind of trying to apply it to that, if that makes sense. Because if we were all in class together, we would have started this lesson with that particular piece. Okay, I did steal an awful lot of what I'm going to be giving to you guys from this website. So if you ever want to look, you know, I didn't get this all on my own. I did go out and steal some ideas of exactly what to do with sculpture. So what were people's favorite sculptures that he had? Any thoughts?
Mine was the bicycle reflector one. It just, I don't know, it was really cool because it seemed to glow, and then I don't know. It just seemed like it'd be kind of cool wherever it was, and just it'd always pop out. And
Yeah, I didn't get the idea from his thing when he showed the weave in the beginning. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was like, okay. And then he got all those reflectors and put it up there, and I was like, that's really cool. Um, and yeah, it looks like it's electric, but it's not. Um, I don't know. I liked the one that was supposed to be like the eddy behind a boat.
Me too.
I thought that one was really cool. One of the things that I think we have to ask about his is if we like it. And I mean, I do. I don't know. Hopefully you guys did too. But that first gut reaction tells me I like this piece. I think it's interesting. I want to look at it more. I'm captivated by it in some way. When we want to think about sculpture, that's going to be, again, in the same way that we did with speech, where we say, what is the thing that's going to, what is our initial reaction? You know, is it something that I like? Is it something that I think is interesting? And then start to break it down. You're probably not going to want to choose something you hate. You know, that's probably not going to be very useful. And so that's something to kind of think about as we go through this. And then all this other stuff will make sense as to, like, you have to say, like, these next things. Who is the artist? You know, and what is the subject? So if I were going to choose, you know, there was the one with the well, I guess I could use the eddy behind the boat, right? The way that the waves go right behind your paddle on a boat. And so that would be my subject. And I'm not sure what the title of it is. I'd have to go and look it up. I think it might be just that. Where was it made? Anybody remember? I think it's just in his workshop, but he seemed to talk about a reed that he liked to use that was from like California. So I'm going to assume it was then. When it was probably made, oh, I don't know, probably 10 years ago or so, right? And I believe it was an indoor exhibit, and most of his stuff seems to be an indoor exhibit. And I don't know the original location just off the top of my head. It was fairly large. It was made out of wood, right? It was in good condition. And of course, these would be different. Like, some of you really liked the, when I was looking through your art museum tours, some of you really liked things like the Egyptian art and stuff like that. You know, that's where, when we get into this older stuff, a lot of times we need to know, what is the condition of it? You know, is it in any kind of good condition or not? And does it stand alone, or is it part of an installation? Do you guys know what I mean by part of an installation?
yeah.
Yeah, it's so, like, sometimes you'll see that there's a whole bunch of like sculptures or something all together and put together. And so that's what that means. And then we have to ask, what is shown? And I think this is when we start getting past the just, you know, who, what, where, when, why stuff. But what is shown? So if I were going to take that Eddie one, what he was showing that, but then we have to think about, why would he do that? Like, why would he spend so much time thinking about those waves, thinking about the way that a wave moves after you've been on a canoeing trip, or when you're on the canoeing trip? Because if you watched all the way to the very end, he gets asked some questions, right? Did you guys watch after he got asked questions and things?
Yeah.
Okay. So at the very end, he kind of talks about some of it is just noticing the world, right? Taking time to notice and think about the world. And if you think about that was just perfect for how it goes behind a boat. And if you look at that, it's always going to make you think about a time that you were out canoeing or you were out doing something, because it's certainly something that you can focus in on. And he talked about how some things, I think he said his daughter is not a wave, right? And when he says that, he said that there's this tension between noticing the beauty of the world and then noticing just those little bits and pieces. And, you know, whether we overgeneralize things or we don't notice things, and we have that sort of tension in us. And so that was one of the things that he feels like waves kind of show. And so that's why he likes to focus in on them. So if I'm going to talk about him as an artist, what are some of his major motifs? Waves. But if I'm going to talk about a particular piece, I'm probably not going to talk about that. But thinking about why would you do that? I would say it's sort of abstract because it's not actually the thing, and right? Historical setting, it's current, it's our current time, but I think it's certainly a time when we don't always notice the little things. And can kind of get caught in all this other stuff. And then there are no human representatives, but there are going to be in lots of different pieces that you're going to look at. If you really want to get formal, you can talk about the dominant axis as a horizontal or vertical or a diagonal. That's the direction that the thing mainly goes, right? So most of his were horizontal. Volume and shape, is it conical, organic, irregular, regular? How big is it? All of these things have an effect on the audience. And that's the thing I want you to think about, is whenever you talk about any one of these things, you have to talk about what is its effect. How does it help, or how does it actually turn something into something you want to look at? And there's lots of these, and this is all up on that website. So I wanted to look at this piece all together, okay? And I have two of them that we're going to do, and then I'm going to kind of break you guys up to look at some of the others. We've got 9 of you here today, so I may just have, I'll let you guys look at like 1 or 2 of them and have you guys kind of look at them and kind of make some decisions here. But so this is David by Michelangelo. And we can see just by a quick look up a few things about him. He's obviously very large, much larger than human size. In fact, I want you to see how big he is, because this is part of why this is such an amazing piece. This was done in the Renaissance. And so 1501 to 1504, it was done by Michelangelo, which means it was probably done in Italy, right? And it is 5.17 meters tall. 5.17 meters. So that's about how tall? Do I have anyone here?
15 feet.
Yeah, about 15 feet tall. 15, 16 feet tall. That's giant. The statue represents the biblical hero David and is a favorite subject of the art of Florence. So we have to know a few things in order to really look at this piece. Number 1, who is David? Does anybody know the story of David? Anyone? This is David and Goliath.
I was guessing, but
He hit a giant in the head with a rock.
He did. So we have this kid, right? And granted, people make him out like he was supposed to be like some 5-year-old, and I don't think he was supposed to be a 5-year-old, but he is the youngest son. And his father had been told that one of his children was going to end up being the leader of Israel. And so he says, and he's not sure which child this is going to be or anything, but he's got this kind of crazy young kid, and his crazy youngest kid is David. And David likes to do hunting, and David likes to do all sorts of things, and isn't a real refined guy. But there's this, but he was a super big believer in God. And so David goes out, and there's this Goliath giant who's I don't know the exact height, but he's supposed to be like 10 feet tall or something like that. He's this giant, and he's this war hero. He's got all sorts of armor, he's got everything, and he's going to take over their town, and he's threatening everybody. And David shows up as a scrawny little teenager kind of guy, and he shows up and he says, I'll take down this guy. And people offer him armor and all this other stuff, and he says, no thanks. And he gets him with a slingshot and a stone, and he actually takes down the giant. So that's the story. You have to kind of know the story to kind of make a good understanding of this. You also have to know a little something about the time period it's in. When was this made?
Between
the
1501 and
Renaissance?
5004.
Okay, so this is the Italian Renaissance. This is the height of the Italian Renaissance, okay? So since we know that this is the height of the Italian Renaissance, we might want to check out a little something about Renaissance art, because medieval, which was right beforehand, right, would have never had a statue like this. They believed that if you made something that was too realistic looking, that people might end up worshiping it like an idol, right? So they made sure, like if you look at Renaissance art, it's all very cartoony, enough that you can tell who the characters are, but they're never supposed to look very realistic. That changes in the Renaissance, and we start to see people go back to what the Greeks and the Romans had done, which was these very, very realistic looking figures. Now, does he look cartoonish to you?
He's really realistic.
He's a crazy realistic, right? So, and actually, if we go to the next one, these are multiple sides of him. He is very, very realistically done. And he's supposed to be he's supposed to be very realistic looking. So, but he's huge, right? What is so we have to think about that, and we start to see a real change in the fact that we are sort of allowing a person's body, and they go to nudes all the time. Like Renaissance it's always nudes, because they believe that they could show the perfection of that person as a person by not covering them up with all sorts of things. So this is one of those things that if we are looking at this piece and we know that this is definitely glorifying this guy, and we know what that story is, what moment in the story is being depicted by this statue? I mean, I don't know. I feel like if I were talking about the exciting or the important moment in that story, I probably would have shown him either throwing the rock, or I would have shown him over the body of Goliath. Anybody else? But that's not what we see here. When in the story has this happened?
He's still holding the rock, so maybe before he takes down the giant.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting moment to choose. this this piece of Carrara marble that he carved this from had been something that had been really just the piece of marble before he used it was something that people knew was had to be something that would be turned into something magnificent. They weren't going to let just anybody have that piece of marble, right? To have something that's that large and capable of being and is the quality of marble to be able to be carved in this way is something they weren't going to give. And this is the piece that he came up with. Why would he choose? What does it show? When we look at his body, does he look tense? Does he look
Not
tense?
really.
He seems kind of relaxed.
Yeah, he's like confident.
He's confident. He's relaxed. He's got a rock in his hand and a giant. He's supposed to be, 12-year-old, 13-year-old kid with a rock in his hand to go up against a fully armed giant. Why is he so calm?
Well, if he's a big believer of God, then he's confident that God is on his side.
Yeah. So one of the things of what this piece is depicting is that part of what made him such an amazing leader eventually of their country was that he believed in something higher than him that would give him the power later on. And when we were dealing with some of the stuff that people had been through in the Middle Ages, things that were happening in the Renaissance and things like that, did they have a lot of things that seemed bigger than them? They had plagues, they had, all sorts of sickness. Something like 30% of the human population died regularly without plague. There's an awful lot of stuff that they were dealing with that we can't even fathom today. I mean, we're flipping out about, the one that we're currently dealing with. And I'm not saying we shouldn't, but, that was their life all the time. And so having that something, and we also know the church was incredibly powerful at the time, right? So this was something that people could look to and look up to. And, even though he's a little kid, he's larger than life. So, and trusts in what, everybody knew the story. So that was something that they could just trust in. And this was in Rome, this might have been in Venice, but still this is, in Italy. So we're still in this, where the church, like we're very, very close to the Vatican. We're close to all of that sort of stuff. So, very, very powerful church at the time. So this would be something that would be where everybody would have known. And people were just amazed at the craftsmanship of this piece. How you see a rock and turn it into that. I don't know. I can't do it. Maybe you guys can, but I don't think I could. So, not to do another Christian one, but it's another really big and important one. But we'll do this one. I want you guys to do a little bit more of the talking on this one than I'm going to. But this is called Christ the Redeemer. It was made in 1931. It's in a style that's called Art Deco. This is where it is. Obviously, you don't move it, right? And this one is in Brazil, and it stands right over the city down here. And this is Rio de Janeiro. So there's to give you a little bit of a hint of its size. It's not exactly little. And there's another picture of it. So, what do you guys think? What are some things that we might notice about it?
This one's also like really realistic.
From a distance, it feels that way. If we look up here, it doesn't have anywhere near the, in the face or things like that. It isn't nearly as detailed as, David or something. But why do you think that's the case? Sorry. Why do you think that's the case if you look at this?
Probably because you can't like see it from really close up. Like it's mostly from like a far view.
Yeah, most people who see this see it from down here. Any other thoughts?
I don't think no one really knew what like Jesus's face looked like. So like that could also be a factor why it's not really like detailed.
I'll agree with you on that. Most of our actual pictures of him actually look much more like King James I of England than they do of anyone who would have been from the region at the time. What's his shape?
I'm guessing
What did you say, Morgan? I can't hear you.
it shows like I said it's very high to show like the power of Jesus over like the city.
Yeah, I think you're definitely, actually there's an interesting story that goes with this. You can see it obviously is intended for everybody to see it in the city down below, right? And if you notice how a shadow is cast, it makes it so most of the day, anytime after noon, there is a shadow of obviously his main shape here is a cross. I hope everybody can see that. But it makes it so that the shadow of the cross is like goes over the entire city. And they actually saw a significant drop in crime after they put this up there. That whole idea of like God's watching me all the time. So interesting little bit of information. I don't know if that was done on purpose or not, but this one is, it's made out of concrete. And I believe this is a granite base that it's on. And so, yeah, I mean, one of the big things here was for the people of the city to see it. You can't ever see the hands. You'll never see that detail, but the detail of the holes in the hands obviously are there. Art Deco is clear for the time period. So like, if you think of going to a movie theater that's like one of the old movie theaters or going to a Shays or something like that, that sort of style is Art Deco. So if you don't know that style, it was more of a style in architecture, but it certainly worked its way into the art world a lot too. So I am going to have you guys break out into some rooms. I think we will put, let's see. Can you guys find a way to like pin this or something? I think that's what Lexi said it was called. Anybody know?
I don't really see anything like that.
I don't know either. Well, I will put you guys in. So this is the one that'll be room 1 is called Le Penseur, the thinker. Room 2, we're going to have this one that's called Bird in Space. It's by Brancusi. Room 3 will have Louise Bourgeois' Maman. The Statue of Liberty will be room 4. And room 5 is going to be Perseus with the Head of Medusa by Cellini. And I don't think we're going to get much further than this one, but Alexandros of Antioch's Venus de Mayo, which that one's a pretty old one. Okay, so I'm going to put you into some breakout rooms. If you can't get it, you might need to, I'll try to kind of go through it again, like once you're in the rooms, but I'll give you guys about 10 minutes. Does that work? And you guys can look stuff up. You can do whatever you need to do, but then I'll have each one of you kind of talk about this piece. Okay? Everybody understand what you're doing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Okay, I'm just joining you for a second. Can you see the pictures?
Huh?
Can you guys see the pictures?
No, and I can't figure out how to.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so can you see it on your screen right now?
No.
No.
Okay. You guys are one, it's called Bird in Space by Brancusi. And I am, yours is probably the hardest one. If you want to, I would also be okay with you doing Michelangelo's Pieta.
So you just want us to like leave and go look it up?
You can look it up or look it up on a phone, or you can, I don't know how it's gonna work. Can you like minimize and then go into stuff?
I'm doing it on my phone.
You
so,
are doing it on your phone.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we may end up cutting this a little bit short and then having each group kind of try to say something about theirs. And if you don't have all the things answered, that's okay. Do you know what I mean?
So you want us to look at Pieta?
Yeah, it's Pieta by Michelangelo. That one's might be a little bit easier if you're just looking stuff up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because that other one is pretty modern, and If you do not have, oh, you're not on your computer. You're on your other things. So I don't know if that one will help or not. So if I share here, can you see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
that's Pieta. And you can do either that one or you can do the Bourbon Space. I don't care which one you do.
I think I'd rather do the other one.
You want to do the other? Yeah, I kind of thought that the other one is a little more obvious. Do you know what I mean? So that one might be a little bit easier.
So we just kind of have to explain to the group what it was.
Yeah, explain it and try to do, and I'm getting all sorts of messages from the other groups. So yeah, just kind of explain what it was, whether if you think that it's successful, what message do you think it's trying to get out? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
And you've seen it enough now, do you think, maybe? Because I don't know if I'm gonna lose you, because I'm gonna go to the other rooms too.
Okay.
Okay? If I can figure this out. I'll leave this one.